It begins in silence, deeper than the void between stars, a silence so profound that it devours memory, hope, and even the faintest echo of resistance. Beneath the fractured banners of ancient wars, a cult stirs in shadow, unseen yet omnipotent, weaving fate from the seclusion of darkness. They are nameless, faceless, eternal, a sanctum etched in forbidden scripture whose existence is never spoken of above a whisker. In the rust-hung caverns beneath humanity's greatest reliquaries, torchlight flickers against icons older than the Imperium. Every flame reveals not merely stone, but the fossilized ambition of an age when gods still walked among men. Here, beneath a cathedral of condemned dreams, the first oath was burned into flesh, not parchment. The veiled ones hid their wisdom behind sorcery and sacrament, shaping destinies from behind a lattice of heresy and sacred dread. Even the Adeptus Administratum, archivists of humanity's stars, dare not scribe their name. Every page that hinted at their purpose was scorched or lost in the void, erased by decree or devoured by time. Yet their hand moves across empire and void alike, orchestrating the future in a symphony both divine and damned. For in the Warhammer 40K galaxy, every shadow hides a conspirator, but only one cult commands silence itself. Whispers tell of their temples, neither adorned nor defiled, where relics bleed ember light upon altar stones blackened by cosmic sorrow. Some call these sanctums nexuses of fate, others wounds in reality, cauterized by secrecy and sealed with the bones of prophets who saw too much. Beware. To speak their true name is to invite annihilation, not from the Inquisition, but from the paradox at the heart of corruption itself. They are the silence that survives knowledge, the void that outlasts empires. In the hush before revelation, one truth endures. Everything you were allowed to remember was their decision.
The silence that birthed the cult did not remain a murmur. It grew, layer by layer, deception by deception, until it became the tuning fork of empires. While banners rose and the thunder of bolters split the nights of unification, the cult's influence seeped unseen into the marrow of civilization. Theirs was a power not blazoned, but braided into the breath of every decree, every prayer, every half-forgotten name. Above, the world bled ambition. The emperor, luminous and unreachable, began to assemble his legions. Ranger Gene project after project failed or vanished, some erased by untimely sabotage, others ceasing to exist before their seed could sprout, while the true sons, those marked by destiny, rose as living icons of order and war. Their origins, their patterns more intricate than Oramite filigree, all unfolded to a rhythm only the silent cult conducted. Their methods became mythology, their grip, the myth's anchor. Let others chant of the emperor's genius, the mechanicum's vows, the thunderous crusade. The cult saw the precise points where hope became hubris, where divine ordinance curdled into bureaucracy. It was their sabotage of rebellion, cloaked as miraculous providence, that preserved Terra's fragile unity. The assassinations no one could explain, the vanishing of heresies before they were spoken, the timely visions that filled a void at council tables, all flowed from chambers below the world, where flames burned secrets into the skin as initiation and curse. As the Great Crusade ignited, spilling across the stars, the cult's hidden sanctums unleashed new tides of manipulation. Acolytes whispered sigils into Macro-Templars' ears, rerouted orders, destroyed visions before they could ignite civil schism, always nudging, never dictating, muting fate to a manageable hum. To the Legioness Astartes, every victory gleamed with the clarity of destiny. To the cult, each was only tolerable accident, a crisis averted, a prophecy delayed, a potential future left unborn in reverent silence. Within the crucible of expansion, the cult's presence became the graven shadow on every triumph. Planets, liberated in name alone, became testaments to their art. As the conquered nobility soon found their traditions vanished, their epics erased, and only what the cult permitted woven into the tapestry. The cult met each Xenos challenge with preemptive nullification. Orc infestations burned out with unexplained precision. Eldar machinations dissolved in confusion and mistrust, as if their seers glimpsed truths so bleak they dare not voice them. An ecclesiarch's voice is silenced in mid-heresy. Later, the void fills with songs he never sang. The Mechanicum's archives forget entire centuries, yet every relic stripped from history fulfills a silent prophecy. Through the years, the cult engineered obedience not by the terror of flame, but the comfort of forgetting. It was not necessary to kill ambition, only to sand its edges. Murders disguised as mercy, exiles arranged as ascension, libraries lost to the perfumed plagues of secrecy. The most dangerous truths, left unrecorded, settled into the collective amnesia of an empire so vast it could not recall the cost of each hour. Among the Astartes, whispers passed in the forge light. Some sensed an invisible restraint guiding their hands, a hesitation before the final blow, a vision not their own coloring each campaign. Several chaplains recorded dreams of veiled figures, luminous and cold, rearranging battle plans in shadow-lit vaults. When the emperor decreed the Edict of Tolerance, ending centuries of internecine faith wars, some believed it was his will alone. The cult knew otherwise. The ecclesiarchy's most virulent sects had made the mistake of remembering too much, too soon, and thus were quietly shepherded into non-existence. In their sanctums, the cult did not celebrate conquest. Each new compliance, each new world brought to heel was a new lament, a tightening of the labyrinth, a deepening of consequences. For every world united, 10,000 destinies were erased. Every legend suppressed was a prophecy set aside. Their dogma was both shame and necessity. Better to erase the future than invite new corruption. Better silence than suffering. The warp, ever hungering, responded in kind. Psychers born during this silent age often arrived marked, visions clouded, prophecies incomplete. Some say the cult engineered this, thinning the veil to prevent any one fate from blooming too bright. Others contend the silence merely echoed, warping reality itself, a cosmic hush imposed by minds trained in the discipline of erasure. It was in the gene forges of Mars and Luna that their influence reached its apogee. Here, amidst relics more ancient than the Imperium, the cult whispered forgotten algorithms into the dreams of tech priests, veiling innovation with caution, restraining desire with dread. Every leap toward forbidden AI, every reckless reach for soulless automation was met with coincidences that lamed even the most zealous savants. Machine spirits misfired, soulless engines destroyed themselves in improbable conflagrations. The Mechanicum, still proud in its autonomy, never knew how close it came to releasing the dark gifts of old night upon the galaxy again. A magus dreams of a machine god speaking in riddles. Upon waking, he finds all traces of the vision erased, but for a single note, pulsing in rusty binary. Remain silent, or all is lost. Meanwhile, the seeds of schism took root, for no unity can persist forever in so vast a domain. As the Great Crusade came to its zenith, the silent cult foresaw the coming cataclysm, the heresy that would poison the very core of hope. They debated in sanctums never illuminated by daylight. Was it wiser to prevent devastation or to mitigate it? Could the arch-traitor be silenced, or must the wound be allowed so that the deeper rot could be exposed? From these chambers, omens were drawn, not to halt betrayal, but to shape its aftermath. Heroes would be lost, worlds would burn, but from ruin would emerge a new silence, honed and sanctified, steering the Imperium toward survival, no matter the atrocity required. The cult learned then, as only those who orchestrate history do, that order is a paradox. Every system carries decay within its birth. Every ascent is already a fall begun. To control the pattern is to embrace tragedy willingly, to sacrifice all glory on the altar of necessity. They accepted this burden as their inheritance. So the galaxy thundered on, unknowing. Across each triumph rose the shadow of the cult, a promise that no glory would go uncontested, no ambition unchecked, no heresy unremembered. The mask of order is not peace, but vigilance. The surety of progress is the knife at hope's own throat. The cult's ascent was an endless vigilance, every silence laden with the weight of futures denied. Through them, the galaxy endures, but only by refusing to awaken. The light leans, then flickers. In sanctums beneath the empire's feet, the echoes count the names that must never be spoken. The age of order is only ever a prelude, one heartbeat before the darkness.
There was an hour long before memory, when the galaxy's fate was formless, an era dissolved in silence and myth. Within the labyrinthine depths beneath Terra's crust, humanity's first nightmares bled into prayer, each one a shivering sacrament cast before relics no chronicler dares recall. Ash chokes the catacombs, ancient gears grind within unseen sanctums. For in the age of strife, before the thunder of legions and the parchment of edicts, a different power coalesced, coiled not in open conquest, but in secrecy, the silent cult. They were never born, as mortals are, nor forged, as the Astartes. Their genesis was rumor, an infection of forbidden questions seeded amid the collapse of old empires and the blackening of the stars. When techno-barbarian warlords shredded planets for sport, and psychic screams rendered light itself a heresy, a masked brotherhood convened. They spoke not in words, but through the architecture of silence, glances, rituals, blood signs carved into the marrow of new initiates, so that remembrance itself became a prison. Histories would one day try and fail to trace them, for they walked in paradox. Every era that believed itself original was, in truth, their creation. As nomads were subsumed into fiefdoms, as fiefdoms became the crust of crumbling continents, this cult persisted, unseen yet absolute. The same hand that pressed iron into the brow of Terra's kings also extinguished knowledge, cascading the ashes of forbidden texts into storm drains that fed the planet's molten heart. Their every act was a wound clotting history. When the Emperor himself, shrouded in 20 names, moved upon the chessboard, the cult watched from beneath. He was not their author, nor their adversary. Each step he took was measured against prophecy scribed in bone by these unremembered hands. In their hidden sanctum, they gazed down the ages, weaving the emperor's ascent and the imperium's inception into a design so intricate, even the fabricator general would tremble at its perfection. What is creation, if not the orchestration of ignorance? They harvested power not by sword or word, but by fasting away one truth at a time, until only the outline of their design remained. Whenever a prophet dreamt of liberty, he vanished. When priests proclaimed new gods, entire cults were quietly folded into the void, names stricken, monuments reduced to dust that would feed the roots of sacred vaults. The foundation stone of every cathedral, every bastion, every throne was first consecrated in a ritual of omission. What the galaxy forgot became their scripture. It was in the third millennium, as flame and famine unshackled Terra's soul, that their greatest rite unfolded.
The ununification wars raged above, armies clashing, psychers burning with incantations so ancient the air itself convulsed. But in the lightless underworld, among rivers of waste and relics swallowed by time, the cult gathered. They whispered names lost to the stars, reciting vows around an artifact wreathed in black starlight, a relic every inquisitor would die to possess and every heretic would kill to forget. Here, in the silent congregation, destiny was redrawn. They did not care who wore the armor of lords or whose banners billowed above the carnage. In silence, they chose which lines would endure, which gene seed projects would succeed, which dynasties would dissolve, which forbidden technologies would be forgotten at just the right hour, so that mechanicum priesthoods would kneel, believing it their idea all along. The cult thrived on indirection. Their art was not in seizing power, but in veiling it so utterly that none could rebel. Yet, even their rituals were not immune to the warping breath of fate. Once, a single initiate, long before he would become legend, tried to engrave their true purpose into stone. His hand shook as he worked, for he had seen what silence truly births, not unity, but entropy. His tablet was never finished. The day it slipped from his broken grasp, shattering on obsidian tiles, the echoes reverberated through all that followed. They buried his bones beneath 5 layers of ferrocrete, then banished his name, not in anger, but reverence. For to rebel against the origin was to fulfill it. Outside, the world churned. Xenos empires rose and fell. The wart screamed with the dreams and nightmares of 1,000,000 dead gods. Humanity, blinded with its own resilience, mistook its survival for fate. Yet the cult shaped the currents beneath the tide, selecting which rebellions to nurture, which heresies to erase, which night-haunted visions to allow or destroy. Every age of rebirth was, in truth, an age of further concealment. In the void between dying stars, the Adeptus Mechanicus whispered of forbidden genesis, echoes of doctrine engineered not on Mars, but in darkness deeper still. They resolved in one August convocation that their greatest act would always reside in potential, in what was not done, in which powers were left unawakened, which weapons sealed inside myth. If the Black Library records are to be believed, though its own archivists cannot agree, the cult even intervened in the doomed wars of the Old Ones and Necrontyr, clouding the distant past to ensure the galaxy's amnesia. Their mysteries multiplied, never catalogued, always shifting. Some believe they engineered the scattering of the Primarchs, veiling their flight with wars so spectacular the search for truth could never survive the glare. History selects the observable. We curate the possible, the high silence masters would hiss. Rituals were held deep in vaults lined with the bones of failed psychers and traitor tech priests. Blood was not spilled for gods, but for absence, for that which might have been. Acolytes who faltered, who dared believe the silence was mercy, became reminders. The price of peace is the crushing weight of erased futures. Their will became an article of faith to the wise, a terror to the ambitious. Lords would awaken from dreams of revolution, only to find their entire lineage erased from every cogitator and scripture. Planets would mourn for leaders who never existed. In the cult's philosophy, every omission is a blade, one more thread snipped from the tapestry of apocalypse. Generation followed generation, and their work became indistinguishable from destiny. They did not merely react to the whims of warp or empire. The warp itself bent, subtly, to reflect the holes they carved in causality. Once,
during the inferno of 100 years, when night lords and angels warred in the corridors of the dying moon, a single chant from their veiled choir silenced the monster within a Primarch's heart. Regret was their only luxury, carried in the silence between breaths. They are the reason no one truly rules the Imperium, the reason why no truth echoes longer than a single lifetime. Every forbidden gene innovation crushed before it could ferment, every mutiny preempted by vanishing conspirators, every prophecy bent just off the mark, always enough to poison the roots of certainty. Now, you sense their presence, if you dare, in the moments when the galaxy holds its breath. They are the pause between victories, the shadow upon every coronation, the silent cipher behind every saint's martyrdom. On the day of Ascension, when the Emperor sat on the golden throne, a single black candle was extinguished in a nameless crypt, and the universe tilted. A pivot unseen by any historian, but felt by every soul. In this cult's genesis, there is no clean division between good and evil, only the relentless maintenance of possibility, the suppression of consequence, the orchestration of silence. They watch even now through cogitators and corrupted prayer wheels, behind the eyes of every scribe who hesitated before recording truth. If you ever wondered why suffering persists in the Imperium, why destiny loops between horror and hope, know this. It is not fate, but their artifice. The cult is the architect, the void is their cathedral. Every civilization endures by forgetting the real cost of its origin.
No empire ascends without poison in its blood, and no order persists untested by the writhing serpents of its own making. For all their mastery, the silent cult's dominion was not immortal. Every stratagem gestated its own shadow, every silencing bore the seed of rupture. It began, as all betrayals do, not with blasphemy, but with loyalty twisted beyond endurance, secrecy metastasizing into rot. Below Terra's crust, in sanctums grown labyrinthine and feverish with the scent of ancient incense, the cult's own initiates became uncertain. Long nights unfurled around relics glowing faint as dying suns, while new prophecies crept in, addicting the mind to glimpses of futures too intoxicating to refuse. Some watched the Emperor's ascent and wondered, had their guidance preserved hope or merely strangled every alternative? What is corruption, if not the refusal to let the next chance breathe? A splintering began, not sudden, but corrosive. It was the suspicion nestled in the dark that every erased thought was a theft not only from chaos, but from possibility. Some remembered names, faces, a sisterhood exiled for dreaming too brightly, a priest immolated for asking why. These memories gnawed beneath the iron discipline, catalyzing cracks in the foundation. In the cult's doctrine, memory was a knife turned inward. They, prodigal architects, feared the day it would slit their own throat. Above, the galaxy convulsed. The Imperium's unity frayed under unseen pressure. The Primarch's brilliance grew unstable, their alliances brittle. Horus, the favored son, darkened by whisper and prophecy, became the nexus of every unintended consequence. And at the heart of each unraveling, though none could see it, lurched the silent cult, their intent polluted by their own design. They had chosen which secrets to keep and which to kill, but never accounted for secrets that breed in the dark, multiplying as betrayal. Heresy seeped beneath closed cathedral doors, not as a cry for freedom, but despair masquerading as faith. Forgotten sects resurrected forbidden rituals, calling to vanished gods whose bones still hummed beneath black stone. The Mechanicum, infected with visions of forbidden machines, turned from veneration to hubris, birthing abominations whose silence was not obedient, but devouring. The warp listened, smiling. A choir of acolytes intones the litany of veiling, but the melody fractures. One voice sings the names of the dead. All flames gutter but one, flickering teal. In that sickly glow, the High Master falters. Despair bled upward. The cult's greatest curse was always their inability to kneel. They had designed the patterns too well, strangled contingency into extinction. Where once their schemes preserved order amid chaos, now their touch bred sterility. Worlds stagnated, spirit stilled, innovation gnawed to dust by the persistence of forgetting. Humanity's vision blurred. What would you become if protected for too long from truth? The silent cult became what they had always hunted, the architects of ruin paved as sanctuary. Factions splintered, for even in silence, the hunger for self-consequence prevails. Some initiated a doomed project, the recovery, to recall that which had been omitted, to carve letters back into the book of fate. They would kindle old names, resurrect the lost, unseal relics. But the universe abhors the denial of entropy. Those who remembered too much suffered curses, madness, death by psychic backlash, entire bloodlines erased by shadowy hands bearing their own mark. It was an age of omens. Bloody runes appeared on sanctum floors, cast from the bones of failed initiates. The light of relics sputtered, tainted. One master, known only as the archivist, found his mind unraveled, each night reliving a memory forcibly excised, until every dawn he forgot more than any mortal could ever recall. His final whisper, "We are not silence, we are the void that forgets itself." A nameless citadel's defenses fall, not to siege or claw, but to a single silent figure bearing a scroll sealed with their own sigil. The defenders bow, weeping. No one remembers why. Dissent metastasized as loss. The cult's younger blood questioned the old ways, seeking ascendance not through control but confession. Instead, they invited death, some by execution, others consigned to oblivion so absolute even the warp could not resurrect their shades. Civil war blossomed in secret, sanctum against sanctum, each schism a wound in the fabric of destiny. In silence, 1,000 unseen hands snuffed out 1,000 candles. None who died would ever be mourned, for no one would remember the mourning. Each legacy dissolved in its own annihilation. Beyond the sanctums, the galaxy's wounds deepened. The Imperium's unity frayed under unseen pressure. The arch-traitor marched. As he marched, a single cultist moved unseen through the burning halls of Terra, torching texts and memory alike, further erasing the origin so that what came after could never remake the same mistakes. But the paradox deepened. The more they erased, the more haunted they became, shadows spawning echoes until the very silence screamed. The cult's corruption was not only moral, but metaphysical. A turning inward so absolute that not even their own initiates knew why they plotted. Their dogma soured. Decay, once held at bay by vigilance, now grew rampant. Some began to worship the act of forgetting as holy, a sacrament greater than any god or principle. Others abandoned hope altogether, choosing self-exile into the void. Some to be reborn as agents of rival powers, others to be devoured by madness. Warp storms flared. Planets old and proud vanished in screams and radiation, populations slaughtered in the name of stability, not even records to mark their passing. In the ashes, children spoke riddles they had not learned, remnants of memories that refused ablation. The cult, in trying to shield civilization from annihilation, had authored an entropy more insidious, a slow, painless extinction of spirit, a corrosion of dream that no battle could ever reclaim. A black relic, weeping ember light, changes hands in a forbidden market. No price is spoken. The buyer forgets his own name as payment. The relic itself grins. By the era's end,
the last High Masters met in a sanctum thick with centuries of smoke and unburied grief. Nothing remained but knowing. The pattern is broken, one intoned, tracing veins of umber light across a cracked reliquary. Some chose oblivion rather than bear further witness. Others disappeared, weaving themselves into new orders, new lies, yearning to undo what could not be undone. Only a few stubborn survivors remained, keepers of the final flame, resolved to atone. Their oath that silence would serve truth, not erase it, that memory, once forbidden, would be reclaimed and guarded with every breath. The price? An eternity of watching, never intervening, sanctuaries transformed into tombs, the last hope cradled in the hands of those who had lost everything to their own purity. In the hidden places of the galaxy, a final prayer echoes, a lament for every possibility betrayed, every world lost, not to fire, but to forgetfulness. The cult wanders its own labyrinth, torches guttering, shadows lengthening. Even gods, it seems, build monuments to their own regrets. The flames are almost gone now. If you listen, you may hear it. The shiver of breath between one epoch and the next. The cult's fall is not celebrated, it is mourned in silence. Yet somewhere, the memory endures, waiting for a time when someone dares to recall what it cost to keep the void at bay. The echoes persist. The abyss waits.
There are truths so deeply interred that even the void itself recoils from their unearthing. These are not the lies of empire, nor the half-myths whispered by traitors. These are the bones of creation, the fault lines upon which every dogma, every extinction, every empire has been balanced. It was inevitable that the silent cult's sanctums, after centuries of concealment and corrosion, would finally burst their seams. Revelation, like fate or rot, requires only time. It begins in a place that cannot exist, a vault beyond the memory of Terra's deepest crypts. Here, behind doors sealed with syllables never uttered in the material tongue, surviving acolytes gather before the relic at the center, a tablet carved from living darkness, flickering with runes that recall every name, every world, every moment the cult has unmade. For a span equal to the history of grief, they have kept vigil, denying themselves mercy, denying the galaxy its complete story. The truth they serve, at last confessed within this sanctum, is the paradox of all architects. Silence, once sacred, becomes the pit from which monsters crawl. In their quest to shield the future from apocalypse, the cult became midwives to a subtler doom. The mechanism they constructed is immaculate, recursive, a labyrinth with no center. Every attempt to intervene to save the Imperium was also a step that erased another possibility, another hope, another salvation. A child in a shrine dreams of a world that never suffered, wakes sobbing, clutching a sigil she's never seen. The acolyte who witnesses this understands. The universe mourns what it cannot remember. Now the remaining High Masters finally admit what none once dared speak. They are not the sole architects of fate, nor were they ever truly in control. Their power was always derivative, a shadow cast from a radiance they never saw. The real engine of history is the warp, the riotous sum of every fear, every memory, every prayer suppressed or sung. Their efforts throttled some horrors, but far more, their omissions seeded the hunger that empowers chaos itself. It is not the visible heresy that feeds the demons, but the sum of all agonies erased too swiftly, all wisdom denied too absolutely. When the emperors chosen vanished into heresy, the cult believed themselves betrayed by what they could not predict. But revelation stabs deeper. The heresy arose from the pattern of their own interventions. Horus's rebellion grew not from ambition alone, but as a wound left open by silences, questions never answered,
grief denied, devotion protected at the cost of truth. In saving the Imperium from external apocalypse, they had architected the internal. The sanctum, so long a place for keeping the world untainted, is revealed as the crucible of its greatest infection. Acolytes circle the relic, their shadows writhing with memories not their own. One sees the emperor weep, knowing he has not simply lost a son, but paid the price set by those who believed omission was mercy. This is the hidden doctrine, the secret no inquisition, no saint, no demon ever fully fathomed. History is a bargain struck in shadow, and the cost of survival is the memory of 1,000 unchosen fates. Each time the cult erased a potential apocalypse, they corrupted the fabric of reality, creating spiritual wounds where none should have been. These wounds, invisible to the laity, become banquet halls for the warp's whispering hunger. Within the sanctum, the last masters review forbidden archives. Runes bloom bright with the tally of their omissions. A civilization that never united, whose vision would have ended the long night. A prophet spared the pyre, who could have cured the age of apostasy. A single gene seed project, erased because it bore the spark of true peace. Each line is a negation, a dying future collapsed into nothingness. But the warp remembers. Echoes persist, and in them, demons find their way. In a cathedral on Ganymede, an old priest speaks in tongues, naming futures no one else recalls. The Inquisition searches, but his mind is clear. He is only the echo of the truth the cult denied. The cult's greatest heresy is neither their secrecy nor their murders, but their sacrament of forgetting. Memory is the true relic of the galaxy, the only weapon against entropy and chaos alike. In denying history, the cult armored the Imperium but also shackled its soul. As custodians of silence, they became engineers of isolation. Even the Emperor's genius was crippled by their interference, denied the warnings, the prophecies, the ageless knowledge that could have averted doom. And so it becomes clear, the true enemy is not chaos, not Xenos, not the heretic or the witch. The true enemy is the pattern that insists safety is possible only by silence, that sacrifices all vision for security. In their zeal, the cult fulfilled a prophecy they never wrote. The spiral of order into atrophy, the perfect silence that becomes a tomb. A rogue psyker collapses, burning with visions lost to every archive. His last words, "Not all that fades is evil. Sometimes even echoes save." One among the remaining cultists, the youngest, the last, speaks what no one else may. "We have become the very shadow we feared. If we keep the secret, only silence remains. If we reveal it, the galaxy drowns in screams. Choose." Around the obsidian relic, choices collapse. Secrets kept too long become curses. But some truths destroy if spoken. The sanctum is no longer a place, but an idea. One final crisis in which the cult must decide what kind of future to engineer, endless forgetting or one last revelation. In the crackling glow of the relic, the faces of erased prophets flicker in and out of reality. One smiles, a silent benediction or a warning. As the secret finally unfurls, it is not with triumph, but with loss, and admission that there is no true victory in games of memory and silence. To be architect is also to be prisoner. For every legend written in the stars, 1,000 more rot in the dark. The cult's hidden truth, there is no unbroken pattern, only a tapestry of wounds cleverly concealed. The circle breaks. The torch gutters, the sanctum grows cold, and the galaxy, unknowingly, weeps for all that might have been. But in that closing silence, a final paradox lingers. Sometimes the only way forward is to remember. Even forbidden knowledge can heal, if only dared.
The darkness deepens. Memory stirs.
What remains when silence outlives its makers? In the void where gods once schemed and empires shattered, only echoes endure. Whispers twined through ruined sanctums, haunted reliquaries, and the scarred memory of worlds that will never know what was lost. The galaxy stirs beneath the ashes of its engineered ignorance, and the cult's legacy fungi spreads, unseen, feeding on cataclysm and hope alike. The aftermath is neither renewal nor pure annihilation, but a liminal dusk. The cult, now scattered, hunted, half myth, abides only as allegory. Agents who traverse shadow, archived by no order, recalled by no song. They move between the cracks of Imperium and galaxy, present as hunger in a prince's hesitation or as chill in a priest's final benediction. Their sanctums, hollowed out and sealed with steels of warning, have become mausolea for memory itself. Fragments remain, a broken seal etched with the word relinquish, and ossuary filled with relics no priest dares claim. History staggers on beneath the weight of lost wisdom. Each age attempts to reclaim what the silent architects erased, but finds only riddles and relics smeared with the residue of purpose withheld. On Cadia, before the fall, Amagos excavates a machine, gears locked with the fleshless hand of its last user, no data, only a recursive loop of silence. In the spire of a hive world, an orphan dreams of voices speaking languages never spoken, sketching star maps forbidden by any astropath. A centuries-old parchment flares to life in the hands of a dying inquisitor. It reveals a blueprint for peace, but the language is forbidden, and the letters burn away before his eyes. The only word left behind is remember. The cult's legacy is most tangible not in what survives, but in how civilizations fear forgetting. Every synod that gathers to debate fate's threadwork does so in terror that something vital has slipped through the seams, a prophecy erased, a danger unmarked, a hope destroyed by omission. Thus, paranoia anchors the soul of the Imperium. Even saints scrutinize their own revelations as suspect. The Ordo Hereticus, obsessed with secrets within secrets, chases ghost trails left behind by architects already gone, always one step behind the collapse engineered centuries before. The present is never free of these revenants. In the aftermath of the heresy, children born on shattered Terra exhibit memory echoes, ancestral grief for choices never made, faint empathy for nightmares not their own. Rogue psychers, seized by the black ships, rage in tongues that slip beyond the edge of comprehension, shivering with the memory of alternative histories rotting in the collective unconscious. The warp cackles, sated not by fresh carnage, but the slow decay of potential denied and futures sacrificed. On a dead world scorched by exterminatus, a single altar remains. At its base is a trail of fingerprints in the dust. 7. Always 7, whenever the wind is still. Among the scattered cult survivors, a reckoning grows. Some adopt ascetic lives, seeking atonement in vows of witness, becoming chroniclers who record without erasure, preserving what little can be salvaged in hidden scripts and coded prayers. They become custodians of pain, bearing the burden of memory's poison and its flawed grace. To their minds, history is a garden pruned too harshly, a place where only brambles and blighted fruit remain, but where with care, wildflowers might someday root. But not all who survived choose redemption. A few fractured cells continue the old doctrine, guarding vestiges of forbidden relics and black technologies, ever tempted by their old strength. Their creed is stasis, to freeze the galaxy in a perpetual dusk with no true dawn or night. For each such hand, the Ordos and other hunter orders dispatch specters of their own. Thus the cycle of control and rebellion, silence, and scream is reborn in the margins of every age. Meanwhile, ordinary mortals pay the price. The cult's manipulation starved the heart of civilization, stunting art, stilling philosophical courage, making paranoia a sacrament. For every hero who rises, 10 die forgotten in the shadows, betrayed by a world suspicious of those who dream beyond their assigned myth. The Mechanicus, once harbingers of innovation, now hoard knowledge as currency. Fear of another fall binds every cog and blessing in suffocating ritual. Even the ecclesiasticery bends, the emperor's word wielded less as promise than as quarantine against ghosts that might awaken if too many truths align. In the echoing crypt of a cardinal world, a mute scribe uncovers an old, battered tome. It is filled not with words, but erasures, every line crossed out, every truth annulled. Yet in the darkness she hears weeping, and the weeping is her own. Over centuries, the cult's deeds become legend, then parable, then rumor. Beware the shadow that edits memory, warn the terrified and wise alike. A child with dreams untouched by pain is watched too closely. A scholar whose research glimmers too brightly vanishes into the dusk. Sometimes a cathedral bell will ring when no hand moves it, a ghostly warning that a deeper silence is still watching. For the galaxy cannot bear to wholly forget, cannot entirely forgive the shadow that shepherded its fate. Yet in the waste left behind, there germinates at last the possibility of change. A few, bold or broken, trace the forbidden scars back to their roots. They gather fragments, stories almost lost, shreds of prophecy snatched from oblivion, songs recovered from before the fall. In these patchwork legacies, new myths take root, pale, fragile, but real. These improbable rebel archivists fight not against heresy, but against the erasure of meaning itself. Their courage, small, persistent, desperate, is the flicker that tomorrow might hold an end to engineered forgetting. For legacy, the galaxy inherits the full spectrum: caution and curiosity, obedience and rebellion, the splendor and the sickness of memory, hoarded and denied. The wounds the cult left foster monsters and martyrs in equal measure. Their sanctums, mostly dust and bones now, become pilgrimage sites for the broken, but rarely for the powerful who fear what might awaken among the ruins. Even the embers of their artistry, and erased name here, a vanished destiny there, glow in the warp, beckoning those who hunger for just one more forbidden truth. In a city grown on ancient bones, a child draws 7 doors in the dust. None of them lead to anywhere that can be seen. Her mother forgets the drawing within minutes. The dust, unsettled by a hidden wind, persists. So the Imperium lurches onward, never whole, never free from the shroud cast by its forgotten architects. The silent cult is legend, is warning, is wound. Every song sings, somewhere, of what cannot be spoken. Every survivor, deep down, is an unwilling inheritor of their silence. Should you find an old sanctum, torchlight guttering, listen well, for the echo that answers may not only be your own voice. It may bear the sorrow, the wisdom, or the curse of those who shaped the world by erasing its memory. For in every aftermath grows the aching possibility of legacy, reclamation, or oblivion, hope, or hush. And for those who still whisper in shadow, legacy is not what survives destruction, but what endures forgetting. And some echoes, however faint, refuse to yield. The relics sleep, but the shadows remember.
In the silence after catastrophe, the galaxy itself contemplates its scars. The stars burn cold above sanctums choked with dust, their pale light flickering through dying reliquaries as if seeking secrets too ancient for speech. You stand at the threshold, breathing memories that were not yours, haunted by echoes that will never retire. Here, in the hush between the last legend and the next, the fabric of truth thins, and meaning swells like a void about to speak. No creed endures long enough to escape its own paradox. The cult, architects of destiny and erasure, manufactured certainty while sowing oblivion. All their wisdom, all their ruin, comes to rest in a single question. What if memory is the torch of all sentient life, and forgetting is the abyss from which corruption and hope alike emerge? In the Warhammer cosmos, tragedy is not a passage, but a place, an empire always risking that its greatest protection becomes its gravest wound. The paradox is palpable. The Imperium survives because it cannot bear the whole truth. Silence may protect, but it also suffocates. Order might stave off an apocalypse, yet it renders the spirit blind to all futures gestating in sorrow. There is no final victory, only the ongoing negotiation with ruin, only the candle guttering before a storm. If you listen to history's threnody, you hear not triumph, but longing, the ache from meaning that only remembered pain makes possible. A war-scarred archivist finds a fragment of song hidden in rubble, sings it aloud, and every listener hears a different memory. No story ends. All stories are tapestries knotted with forgetting. The cult's last gift and warning is revelation without peace. In the ruins they wrought, you face the choice only mortal minds ever meet: to remember and risk the agony of truth, or to forget and yield to the peace of decay. The warp howls with the hunger for omitted suffering, but in that emptiness, seeds of healing might sprout, if only someone has the courage to recall what should never be spoken. Existence, then, finds its abiding purpose not in victory, but in persistence, not in the silencing of horror, but in the meaning forged from its memory. No sanctum is ever truly closed. Each legend is a living question. As you gaze into the void, see not only darkness, but the shimmer of stories hungry to be recovered, wisdom eroded but not erased. So if the echoes of this story stirred you, remember, every legend hides a warning. Subscribe and listen for the next one, for the galaxy is not merely a graveyard of silence, but a labyrinth of remembrance and ruin, and some truths, even if forbidden, are the only hope the future will ever know. The sanctum dims, the echoes remain.